I will show you how memories will be modified inside Java program. First we will create a Java class. Then I will show you how modifications will be done and how replaced value will be stored in memory. First I will create a class. Class some sample. This is my class. Here I will create main method public static void main string array args. Inside this main method I will create int a is equal to some 50 value. Next I will print this a in on my console system.out.println. This is a value. Next I will modify this value. This int a is equal to 50. First I will not modify this value. We will see the exact value. Next I will create our example class object inside this. Example e1 is equal to new example. System.out.println. I want to print e1 object. This is my sample class. Example e1. When we execute this program, how internal memory will be created for this primitive and referential variables? we will see. First class will be executed, then control comes to main method, then it will see int a is equal to 50, then it will create memory for this a variable and it will store this 50 inside this memory, and it will name this variable as a. This is how memory will be created for our a variable. Next, we have written printing our a variable value on console. That's the reason we are using system.out.println a. Next, I am creating our example class object. Example e1 is equal to new example. Then I am printing e1 object address on console. How memory will be created for this example class object, we will see now. First, it will create a memory. Inside this memory, our example class primitive variables data will be stored, like x and y. My example class consists of two primitive variables x and y. For this x and y primitive variables, memory will be created inside example class memory. And that number, whatever the value we have inside x, will be stored inside this memory. Next, for y also memory will be created inside this. It will store y value, which is 20. And this memory will be having some address, a reference address like some 110, 110. And this memory has a referenced variable name e1, because our referenced variable name is e1. This is how e1 memory will be created inside memory. This is how internally it will create memory for our referenced variables and primitive type variables. First, it will create primitive variable. First, it will store this 50 inside this memory and it will name as, and it will give a reference, and it will give whatever the name we have given for primitive variable, it will name it as a. Then control comes to example e1 is equal to new one. Then it will create e1 memory with whatever the primitive data we have inside example class. Those memories will be created inside e1 reference. Then it will give address as 1010. Then it will be printed on console. We will see how it will be executed on our console. First, we will create this program. Just create new class sample. This is my sample class. I will create main method, public static void main string array args. Inside this main method, I will create int a is equal to 50. I will print this a, system.out.println our a value. Next I will create example class object. Example e1 is equal to new example system dot out dot println e1. I will print this e1. So we will execute this program. Just save it. Control S. Sample.java. Now we will execute this program. First we have to compile it. Java C sample.java. We have compiled successfully, then we have to execute it. Java sample. Then it is printing my a value has 50, then e with a reference address, example some 15db9742, some address. So this is how it will create memory for our primitive variables and reference variables. We have seen this. Now I want to modify these values. Whenever I modify these values, what is going to happen inside memory, we will see now. For example, I want to store inside a variable, I want to store 70. I want to modify this value. Whenever we are writing a is equal to 70 inside our program, what will be happened is our 50 will be removed from our memory, then our modified value 70 will be stored inside this memory, and this memory will be pointing to our a variable. This is how it will replace the modified value with the modified value from previous value. If we modify our example class object, what is going to happen we will see now. So we will write e1 is equal to new example. I want to modify this e1 variable. What we are doing here is, already we have example e1 is equal to new example and we have e1 memory. Again I am creating with same e1 referenced variable with new object. What will be happen for this we will see now. For referenced variables, it will create new memory and it will name it as e1, because we are giving same name for our referenced variable. Then it will store my primitive data which I have inside example class. This is my x variable. This is my y variable. Y. Then it will store this 10, 20. inside this memory. And for this reference, address will be there like some 2020. This is the address for my modified variable. So what happens here is our E1 referenced variable will be pointing to this new modified address. Then inside our E1 reference, before it stored 1010, because before it is pointing to previous object. That's the reason before it is stored 1010. But whenever you create with same referenced variable new object, then this 10010 will be modified with our new referenced address like 2020. This 2020 will be stored inside my E1 reference. This is how our modified value will be printed as output in our Java. We will execute this program. So first I will modify this primitive variable. A is equal to 70. Next I will modify this referenced variable. I will create E1 is equal to new example. Then I will print this system.out.println. This is my E1 object reference. We will print this modified value also, system.out.println modified A value. We will print this A. Now save it. Go to command prompt. First compile it, javac sample.java. I have compiled successfully. Now we will execute java sample. Then it is showing me A is equal to 50. Then it is showing me A value which is modified as 70. Means our A value, inside A value memory we have 70 value. Then it is printing E1 reference variable address. It is printing example some @15db9742. Then I have created with same reference variable with modified object. Then it is printing me example @6d06 some different address. This is how modifications will be happen, and it will print modified values, modified address inside primitive and reference variables. So whenever we are creating a primitive variable, we are storing some value. The value of primitive variable is a mathematical data based on its data type. And whenever we are storing with a referenced variable, it will store the object's reference. It will not store any mathematical value. It will store object reference. Just we have seen like here, whenever we are creating primitive variable with 50 value, it will create a memory with reference A, then it will store 70. But whenever we create referenced variable, even reference, inside even reference, object's reference will be stored. It will not store any mathematical value. It will store object's reference inside this, then that reference will be pointing to our even memory. So this is the conclusion about primitive and referenced variables with modified values. Next we will discuss about